Hi, evening, everyone. My name is Tela Loretta Troge. I'm a member of the Shinnecock Nation, and I am also an attorney, and I had the great honor of working very closely with Tomashi in her studio as she put together the amazing, incredible master artworks that you see in her exhibit displayed here at the Parrish. And what I love most about Tamashi's work is that she's research driven. Tamashi spent over a year researching and collecting stories and collecting images before she even started to assemble her amazing artwork. And so her exhibit is called The Land Claim. And she got the name after speaking to my cousin, Kelly Dennis, who told her about the land claim, which to us, it's just something we always talk about, the land claim, the land claim, the land claim. And Kelly and I are both attorneys. And we were driven by the land claim. And so the land claim really is linked back to the 1859 taking of our land, which is also linked back, you heard a little bit at the beginning of this, the introduction, but Samuel L. Parrish, who founded this art institute, was an attorney for the Long Island Railroad, and he really implemented this theft that really set into motion this terrible injustice. We could say that it was set into motion hundreds of years before with the doctrine of discovery, which was a religious papal doctrine that said that people with darker skin, black, brown skin, weren't human enough to own land, and therefore white European colonists and settlers were entitled to take the land from them. And so that became indoctrinated into American jurisprudence. And so one of the things that I think is so fascinating is that when you start law school, no matter what law school you go to, anywhere in the country, you start by learning property law. And the first case that every single student learns when they open up their property law textbook is it's a case called Pearson versus Post. And it's about two families from Southampton, the Pearsons and the Posts, and they're hunting on a hunting expedition through what they call the wasteland, which is probably Cooper's Beach. They considered the beach as the wasteland, a horrible, horrible place that no one would ever want to go, and something that Shinnecock Nation treasured immensely. We've survived at least 13,000 years from the bounty of the sea, and it's something that is so valuable to us and to our existence as whalers and wampum makers, but that something was just so, not valued at all by the colonists. As Jeremy mentioned, now we have to pay a lot of money to even visit, which is just wrong. So we start to see this pattern in American legal jurisprudence of this false, just legal fallacy, mythology that now people think that, Shinnecock, we don't have resources, we don't have money because we happily signed away our land, and that's just not the case. And so that's really the basis of what the land claim is, just kind of correcting some of these historical injustices and working together with all the people on the stage and everyone in the audience too has the opportunity to work with us to begin to bend the arc of justice towards a more equitable path, a more equitable distribution of the land and all of the resources, because again, we're in a place where it's such a bountiful place. There's more than enough here for all of us and for our entire community to prosper. There's no reason that some have to have less than others. And so I hope that what we can all take away from the land claim is the spirit of working together to form this more equitable future and distribution of resources and labor to create a more just and equitable society. And so I want to talk a little bit about one of my favorite pieces that Tomashi created during her residency at the Watermill Center. This piece is called Among Protectors, and it features two powerful images. The base image is the the Pell case, and the top image in red is Hawthorne Road. And I want to talk a little bit about the Pell case first. So the image, the base image in blue that you see, is a picture of Doreen Dennis. And she is sitting in front of a bulldozer and being just harassed by a New York State trooper, which I'll skip ahead so you can see the image. This is the image that creates the base. And so just to give a little background, Doreen Dennis grew up on the Shinnecock Indian Territory, and one day she noticed William Pell was building a home located on territory right behind where her home was. And so she took matters into her own hands, as oftentimes Shinnecock women have to do. And she said, "You can't build here. You can't build. This is Indian land. You're not entitled to build your home." And so for a while, it was just a complete standoff, but Doreen refused to lose any ground. And eventually, the tribal trustees, who at that time were 3 men, listened to her concerns, took them seriously, and did some outreach to the Suffolk County attorney. And so the Suffolk County attorney looked through the New York State Indian law and found that there was a provision to eject trespassers. And so it had never been done. And this case it started in 1997. So in the 1990s, you started to see a lot of land claims from other tribes in New York start to go through the Second Circuit, which is a federal appellate circuit. And so the Second Circuit is known as a place where Indian land claims go to die. It's not good. You do not want your land claim going through the Second Circuit, and that's still true to this day. And so there's a case called Sherrill, which basically the United States Supreme Court, it was written by Justice Ginsburg, and she had declared in Sherrill that it was too disruptive for Native people to bring claims because it disrupted the settled expectation of neighbors who had, colonized for hundreds of years and lived on this stolen land. And so that case made it so discouraging for any tribe to, even think about bringing a land claim. But Shinnecock, we moved ahead with the assistance of the district attorney, and we got a real estate expert. His name was Edward Bracken, and he was an expert in something called real estate titles. And he had the ability to basically trace titles back, they say back to the Indians, back to the Aboriginal source of land titles. And so he was able to successfully craft an argument showing exactly why this land did not belong to William Pell. He traced it back to the 1859 taking from New York State that Jeremy spoke about a little bit earlier. And Shinnecock Nation prevailed despite Sherrill. So it was actually a miracle. But it was because of one Shinnecock woman who refused to let this happen, to let these bulldozers come in where they weren't supposed to. And so this was the last, successful land claim in New York State on the entire eastern seaboard, where the Second Circuit has jurisdiction. And so it's a really powerful image. And I'll just go back. And so you can see that's the base of Among Protectors. Also, you'll see in the center of the image is a square, and it's made of wampum dust from Shane Weeks, just spending hours and hours and hours reviving our traditional practice of making wampum into jewelry and beads. And They have an amazing workshop, and they tell each other stories and legends and just really carry on our culture. So that's the heart of this image. And so the top layer is called Hawthorne Road. And so Hawthorne Road is significant to us because in 2019, a real estate developer was developing a home. There's not too much land. I'm sure everyone knows there's not too much land left to develop. But there are a couple of vacant parcels in the Shinnecock Hills, which is, again, the land that was taken from us in 1859. And, we have spent many, many generations advocating against the development, the overdevelopment. It's an extraordinarily sensitive ecological area, but it's also the burial area of our ancestors and our leaders. And so this specific area on Hawthorne Road is right outside of a particularly sacred area called Sugarloaf. It has a designation of being a critical environmental area because it is a known burial area. And so unfortunately, despite many decades of advocacy, we were only able to get so much land designated as this critical environmental area that has restrictions on building and development. This is right outside of it. And to our horror, one day, I think it was actually my aunt Denise called me, and she said, "You got to get out here right away." And so I drove over there, and it was one of the worst days ever. We, by that point, the homicide department was called, and they had discovered the skull through the construction, and we were all there, and we were asking them, please don't disturb our ancestor, please just stop what you're doing. But they wouldn't listen to any of no matter what we did, wouldn't listen. And so we had to stand there and watch while our ancestor was taken out of the ground. Later, Jeremy was able to identify an object that was with the remains as a type of vessel that was typically buried with our leadership. And so we knew that this was the burial site of one of our leaders from the 1700s. And so, we knew this right away just because of stories that had been passed down to us and what we were told and what our elders had taught us. And so despite this, we were told that this was not our ancestor, that this was not a sacred burial, that this was an MS-13 murder site. And so our ancestor was taken from us. Again, we pleaded with them, please don't. And so they confiscated it and did this entire horrible investigation, which ultimately they determined that this was a person of Native American descent. And finally, we were able to do rematriation and reburial through a partnership with the Peconic Land Trust. We worked really closely with them to raise money. And so again, Shinnecock Nation, we've had a lot of our land and resources and labor stolen from us for hundreds of years. So we don't have a lot of resources. And so we were told that the only way that we could protect this burial site was to buy it back at market value, which was an almost impossible task. And I'm not sure how we did it, but we had to do it. And so we worked with Peconic Land Trust to raise the money. And we worked with the town of Southampton to use the Community Preservation Fund, which is it's fueled by a 3% real estate transfer tax on every transaction that happens in each of the 5 East End towns. It's public money, and it's meant to preserve sites of cultural importance. And so unfortunately, it's very difficult and takes a lot of lobbying and advocacy for the town of Southampton to use it to preserve what little is left of the Shinnecock Hills, but it's something that we attempt to do on a daily basis, just to remind the town of Southampton this is the right thing to do. We have to work together. We have to protect this land, preserve it, and purchase it as quickly as possible. I think with COVID-19 and the mass exodus of people that moved out here from New York City, we saw the population of the Shinnecock Hills increased by 38%, which is higher than any other area um, in the town of Southampton. And we also have seen, as a result of that population increase, just this horrible impact on our water quality, because there's a complete lack of septic systems. And so we just can't sustain the population increase. Again, it's an extraordinarily sensitive ecological area. But through this partnership and through the work that we did to preserve this site at Hawthorne Road, recently we were able to do it again with the town of Southampton and the Peconic Land Trust and preserve probably like the heart of Shinnecock Hills and the heart of Sugarloaf, the critical environmental area. And we recently just closed and made an acquisition of the most sacred, highest area. Kelly can talk about it a little more about our burial practices. But so we continue this partnership, and so if anyone here is interested in helping us, we started a fund with the Peconic Land Trust. It's called the Shinnecock Land Acquisition and Stewardship Fund. We started it a couple of months ago. To date, we have raised almost $70,000, which is amazing, but we still have a lot of more funds to raise. And so if you would like to make a contribution to that or learn more about that, you can visit the Peconic Land Trust. But these two images form this incredible piece called Among Protectors, Hawthorne Road and the Pell Case. And so it was really just an honor being in Tomashi's studio and her having these images that she had so carefully collected. And she would say, Tela, would you tell me about these images? And so I would tell her about them as she painted these works. And as you can see, the result is absolutely beautiful, incredible, and she really captures what happened here so beautifully. And we're just so appreciative of Tomashi for coming and giving Shinnecock this platform and doing the research and sharing the stories that you have heard tonight. And so again, I just thank you for being a part of it, and I'm gonna turn it over to Kelly, who's gonna close us out.